It was Henry David Thoreau who said, "The richest man is one whose pleasures are cheap." Yet today, many record collectors seem to believe that an album is not worth owning unless it's worth money. I'm here today to tell you that that's not true, and to prove it, I have with me 10 dollar bin records that are worth owning in your collection. And first up, it's the Ventures Telstar. This album, everybody has seen this album. If you go to a record show and look through the dollar bins, you will find a copy of this. This is a classic instrumental album from the 1960s. Telstar is one of the greatest instrumentals of all time. There's no question about that. This is not the original version. The original is by the Tornadoes, but that album is a little bit harder to get. This one's super easy to find. Great album, lots of great covers. You got Green Onions, you got Apache, Red River Rock. These are all just such classic guitar instrumentals. Listen to this album from beginning to end, you're just going to have a good time. So definitely pick this one up if you come across it. Number 2, The Unicorn by the Irish Rovers. Another album that everybody has seen, but most people really don't pay much attention to it. I mean, come on, it's the Irish Rovers. There's no hard rock guitar licks on this one. But this is a classic folk album. The Irish Rovers were such a iconic group, and they really had a place in pop music history. This is not just for folk fans. This album is very accessible to people who aren't fans of folk music, and it's a great introduction to a genre that you may not have paid any attention to. Definitely worth listening to. I also highly recommend their album Tales to Warm Your Mind, but again, that one usually isn't in the dollar bins, but that's my favorite album from the Irish Rovers. But The Unicorn, definitely the easiest to find, definitely worth picking up. Number 3, Snoopy and His Friends, The Royal Guardsmen. Everybody knows that song about Snoopy versus the Red Baron on Christmas Day that plays on the radio every year at Christmas time. Yeah, well, that's on this album, as you would guess from the back cover. But the Royal Guardsmen really stuck with that theme. The entire A-side of this album is all Snoopy. 3 different extended versions of their songs about him. And even carrying over onto the B-side, the World War I dogfighting, airplanes and all that. The theme just carries through the whole album in a really unique way. The Royal Guardsmen really, they don't get the credit that they deserve. People put them up against the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and their other contemporaries. Of course, they're not on that level in terms of the impact that they've had on musical history. But they're a great band. They had fun, and you'll have fun too if you give them a listen. Number 4, kinda hurts me to have to recommend this one, but it's Harry Belafonte's Calypso. Yes, I am a big fan of Calypso music, and because of that, I really have to say, this is not a true Calypso album. This is more American folk, really, than it is true Calypso. However, the importance of this album in musical history cannot be understated. This is the first album ever in any genre to sell over 1 million copies. It was a massive, massive hit, and the effect that had on Caribbean musicians, giving them an ability to break into the mainstream pop music market, was huge. So yeah, even though Harry Belafonte is not a Calypsonian in the true sense, this is a great album. It's just such a classic. If you like the movie Beetlejuice, you'll recognize a few of the songs on here from that. But the whole thing is worth listening to. It's great stuff. It really is great stuff, and you can easily find it for $1 and add a real piece of musical history to your collection. Number 5, Leapy Lee's Little Arrows. This one's a bit harder to find, but when you do find it, it's super cheap. This is a 1960s pop album. It's got some rock sort of overtones. Again, you put this album up against the Beatles and other stuff that was coming out at the time. Of course it's not that good. Of course it's not that important. But it's still a great album, and it's still worth giving it a listen. I was lucky to find this one in really nice shape. Before that I had a beat-up copy. But great example of English pop that isn't strictly in the British Invasion rock style. Number 6, an album I already talked about before, Night Flight to Venus from Boney M. This is the best disco record ever. I don't have any hesitation in saying that. It's such a great album. Every song on it is such a classic, and it's not all disco. If you hate disco music, still listen to it, because you got real soul styled songs, you got funk style songs, you got even a little bit of rock-ish stuff. You have a song like Voodoo Night, which is just indescribable. I have no idea what category to put that on. It's just so good. It's so good. I mean, I could give this album a full video length review, but I'm not going to. That's enough. Number 7, here's a true classic, After 8 by Taco. This is a masterpiece of 80s synth pop. What Taco has done here is taken a bunch of songs that were hits of basically the Roaring 20s and into the 30s period, and he's updated them to the modern, well, modern in the 80s style. It is amazing. This album is one of my favorite albums of all time, and one of the records that really made me interested in collecting records. It's so cool how he has taken these classic songs and updated them into a new style. Something that nobody else was really doing at the time, so good one. Number 8, another one I talked about before, Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood by Santa Esmeralda. Now, some would say this doesn't really qualify as an album. It's only got 4 songs on it, but one of the songs is 16 minutes long, so I think it's full album length, so I'm calling it an album. This is another disco record. It's another one of the really iconic songs from that genre. You know, a lot of disco music, ever since the so-called death of disco, it really isn't taken seriously anymore. This is one of the songs that has survived, and if you watched Kill Bill, this, I think that's the song that's in it. It's either that or House of the Rising Sun. I don't know. I didn't get through the whole movie. But this record is, it's really great, really great. Number 9, the classic Alice's Restaurant from Arlo Guthrie. This song, in the United States, they play this song on Thanksgiving on the radio stations. It's just a tradition. I don't know why, because the song doesn't actually have anything to do with Thanksgiving, but it is such a great song. And the songs on the B-side are great too. For anyone who doesn't know, Alice's Restaurant, the song, is 18-minute long song that sort of goes back and forth between narration and the chorus being sung. It's great. It's another one of those records that's just so unique. Nobody else did anything like this, and you really have to respect that. You have to respect those artists who created something totally different from what was in the mainstream. The B-side has some more normal songs, which are also great, but yeah, Alice's Restaurant itself is the true standout. So you should definitely have this record in your collection. If you are at all interested in the hippie era, it's a must-have. And finally, number 10, Youre the Cat from Al Stewart. Yeah, I was introduced to this song by my geography teacher in high school. 70s soft rock doesn't get any better than this, and some people would question whether 70s soft rock can be good at all. Yeah, it can. This is an example. And there you have it, 10 dollar bin records that you should have in your collection. Record collecting isn't all about making money, you know? Common records are common because people liked them. They sold lots of copies. So just because something's not worth a fortune doesn't mean it's not worth listening to. A lot of record collectors really need to realize that these days. Well, that's it. I'm out. Gotta go restock my dollar bins.